The escape pod had been drifting through the cold darkness of space for 17 cycles when the twins finally saw the blue planet, pressed her silver-blue hand against the small window and watched as the world grew larger and larger. Beside her, sat in silence with his 4 eyes closed, trying not to think about what they had left behind. But the memories came anyway. They always did. Prime had been a beautiful world. It had tall crystal towers that caught the light of 3 suns. It had rivers that glowed purple at night. It had billions of people who lived and loved and dreamed of futures that would never come. And now it was gone. All of it. Burned to ash by the devourer swarm while and watched from their tiny escape pod, unable to do anything but scream. They blamed themselves. They had been the ones working at the early warning station on the outer moon. They had been the ones who first saw the strange readings on their sensors, and they had been the ones who told their superiors that it was probably just a glitch, that they should wait and gather more data before raising an alarm. By the time they realized their mistake, the swarm had already reached the atmosphere. By the time they launched the warning signal, the first cities were already burning. Billions of lives, gone in a matter of hours, and the twins had done nothing but float away in their pod, watching their world die. Now they were falling toward this strange blue planet, and their damaged ship was shaking so hard that thought it might break apart at any moment. The heat shields were failing. The navigation system was dead. They had no control over where they would land or if they would even survive the landing at all. Opened his eyes and looked at his sister. He did not say anything. There was nothing left to say. They had failed their people, and now they would probably die on some unknown world, forgotten and alone. Perhaps that was what they deserved. The pod hit the atmosphere and fire surrounded them, grabbed her brother's hand and held on tight as the whole vessel screamed with the sound of tearing metal. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Smoke filled the small cabin, and then there was a terrible crash and everything went dark. When woke up, she was lying on soft golden plants. She did not know what they were called. Later, she would learn that humans called them wheat. The sun was bright and yellow above her, so different from the 3 orange suns of her. The air smelled strange but clean. She could hear strange sounds in the distance, like some kind of animal calling out. She sat up and looked around. The escape pod had carved a long black scar across the field, and it was now a smoking wreck half buried in the dirt. Was already awake, standing a few steps away, looking at something in the distance. Stood up and walked to her brother's side. Her whole body hurt, but nothing seemed to be broken. They had survived. Somehow, against all odds, they had survived. But for what? That was the question that haunted her. What was the point of surviving when everyone they loved was dead? And then she heard it. A strange sound. Something between a bark and a howl. She turned toward the noise and saw a creature running toward them through the golden plants. It had 4 legs and golden fur and a long tail that was moving back and forth very fast. Its mouth was open, and its tongue was hanging out, and it was making that barking sound over and over again. Stepped back in fear. She did not know what this creature was. Was it dangerous? Was it going to attack them? But then she noticed something else. Behind the creature, there was a figure walking toward them. It was tall and walked on 2 legs but its skin was a strange pinkish color, and it had only 2 eyes instead of 4. It was wearing simple blue fabric on its legs and a pattern of red and black fabric on its upper body. On its head was a covering made of some kind of woven material. The creature reached them first. It ran right up to and started sniffing at his legs, its tail still moving back and forth. Looked down at it with confusion and a little bit of fear. The creature did not seem aggressive. In fact, it seemed happy. It was making small whining sounds and pushing its head against hand as if it wanted to be touched. The 2-legged figure reached them a moment later. It was a male, could tell that much. He had lines on his face that suggested age, and his eyes were a warm brown color that reminded her of the earth beneath her feet. He stopped at the edge of the crater their pod had made and looked at them for a long moment. Waited for the fear. She waited for the anger. She waited for him to run away or to pull out some kind of weapon. That was what would have happened on Prime if strangers crashed from the sky. People would have been suspicious. People would have been hostile. People would have called the authorities and had the strangers taken away for questioning. But this male did none of those things. Instead, he looked at them, at their silver blue skin and their 4 eyes and their torn clothing, and he did something that did not expect at all. He smiled. It was a small smile, a little bit tired, a little bit sad, but it was real. His eyes crinkled at the corners and his mouth curved upward, and for a moment he looked almost gentle. "Well," he said in a language did not understand at first, but her translator chip was still working, and after a moment the words became clear in her mind. "You folks look like you could use some help." Did not know how to respond. Help. This stranger was offering them help. They had just crashed on his planet. They had destroyed his field. They were clearly not from this world, not from this species, not from anything he had ever seen before, and his first instinct was to offer help. The golden creature was now Licking's hand, and despite everything, despite all the pain and guilt and confusion, let out a small sound that might have been a laugh. The male stepped closer, moving slowly and carefully as if he did not want to scare them. "My name is Sam," he said. "Sam Porter, and that there is Buddy. He's friendly, probably too friendly for his own good." He stopped a few feet away and looked at them with those warm brown eyes. "I don't know where you came from or what happened to you," Sam said, "but I've got a house just over that hill. I've got food and water and a spare bedroom, and I've got a feeling you two have been through something terrible." Felt her throat tighten. She wanted to speak, to explain, to warn him that they were not good people, that they had blood on their hands even if it was not visible, but the words would not come. Sam seemed to understand. He nodded slowly and turned back toward the direction he had come from. "Come on," he said over his shoulder. "Let's get you somewhere safe. We can figure out the rest later." And for reasons could not explain, she followed him. Followed too, with Buddy trotting happily at his side. They walked through the golden wheat field toward a small house on a hill, and for the first time since Prime burned, felt something other than despair. She did not know what it was yet, but it felt like the beginning of something new. Sam Porter's house was small and simple. It had white wooden walls and a red roof, and a porch that wrapped around the front like a warm hug. There were chairs on the porch and a small table with a cup on it, and everywhere looked she saw signs of a quiet life lived alone. Sam led them inside and showed them to a room at the back of the house. It had 2 beds with soft covers and a window that looked out over the fields. The walls were painted a gentle blue color, and there were pictures hanging on them, pictures of Sam with a woman who had kind eyes and a beautiful smile. "This was going to be a guest room," Sam said as he opened the curtains to let in the light. "Never had many guests, but always said we should be ready just in case." He paused for a moment, looking at one of the pictures on the wall. "Was my wife. She passed a few years back." Did not know what to say. Death was something she understood all too well now. She nodded slowly, and Sam seemed to appreciate the silence more than any words she could have offered. He left them alone to rest and said he would make some food. The twins sat on the beds and looked at each other, neither of them able to fully understand what was happening. On Prime, kindness was something you earned. It was a transaction. You did something for someone and they did something for you in return. The idea that a stranger would open his home to unknown beings from the sky made no sense to them at all. "It must be a trap," said quietly. "He wants something from us, our technology maybe, or information about our world." Shook her head. "I do not think so. Did you see his eyes? There was no calculation in them, only warmth." "Warmth does not exist without reason," replied. "Everyone wants something." But even as he said it, he did not sound convinced. And when Buddy came padding into the room a few minutes later and jumped up onto the bed beside him, did not push him away. Instead, he let the dog curl up against his side, and he rested his hand on that soft golden fur, and some of the tension in his shoulders began to fade. That night, Sam made them something he called scrambled eggs. The twins had trouble eating it at first. Their bodies were not designed for Earth food, and the texture made their stomachs twist. But they ate what they could to be polite, and Sam did not seem offended by what they left behind. He asked them questions as they ate, but not the kind of questions they expected. He did not ask about their ship or their technology or their planet's defenses. He asked them their names. He asked them about their favorite things. He asked them if they had any hobbies or interests. Told him that she used to paint. Back on Prime, she had spent hours creating images of the crystal towers and the purple rivers and the three suns setting behind the mountains. All of those paintings were gone now, ash and dust like everything else. Sam listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded and said, "I've got some paint in the garage, nothing fancy, just some stuff I used to touch up the house. But if you ever want to paint again, you're welcome to use it." Felt something stir in her chest. It was a strange feeling, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. She was not sure what it was. The days passed slowly. Sam showed them how things worked in his world. He taught them about the farm and the cattle and the crops. He taught them about coffee, which tasted bitter and strong and made feel more awake than she had in weeks. He taught them about pancakes, which were soft and sweet and quickly became his favorite food. They helped him with work around the farm. They fixed fences and carried supplies and learned how to care for the large animals Sam called cows. It was simple work, physical work, and found that she enjoyed it. It kept her hands busy and her mind quiet. When she was working, she did not have to think about the burning cities or the screaming voices or the weight of all those lives pressing down on her soul. Buddy followed them everywhere. The dog seemed to have decided that the twins were part of his family now, and he was not going to let them out of his sight. He slept at the foot of his bed every night. He sat beside whenever she took a break from work. He seemed to sense when they were sad and would push his nose against their hands until they smiled. One evening, about a week after their arrival, asked the question that had been burning in both their minds. "Why do you help us?" he said. They were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold, so different from the skies of Prime but beautiful in its own way. "We are strangers. We are not of your kind. We could be dangerous. You have no reason to trust us." Sam leaned back in his chair and thought about the question for a long moment. Buddy was lying at his feet, half asleep, his tail occasionally twitching as he dreamed. "My wife used to say something," Sam finally replied. "She said that kindness is not about deserving, it's about deciding what kind of person you want to be." He looked out at the sunset, and there was a sadness in his eyes that recognized. It was the same sadness she saw in the mirror every day. "I spent a lot of years not being kind," Sam continued. "I was focused on the farm, on making money, on all the things that seemed important at the time, and then got sick, and I realized that none of that stuff mattered. What mattered was how we treated each other. What mattered was the moments we shared." He turned to look at the twins, and his eyes were soft and serious. "I decided a long time ago that I want to be the kind of person who helps," he said. "Not because people deserve it, not because I expect something in return, but because it's the right thing to do, and because it's the only thing that makes this world feel less lonely." Felt her eyes begin to burn. On Prime, tears were seen as weakness. You were not supposed to show emotion, especially not in front of strangers. But something about Sam's words broke through the walls she had built around her heart. She thought about all the people she had failed to save, all the families that had burned while she floated away in her escape pod, all the voices that had screamed for help while she did nothing. That night after Sam and had gone to sleep, sat alone in the guest room and cried. She cried for her. She cried for her people. She cried for the future that had been stolen from them all. And then she felt something warm press against her leg. She looked down and saw Buddy sitting beside her, his big brown eyes looking up at her with something that felt like understanding. He did not bark or whine. He just sat there, solid and warm and present. Reached down and buried her fingers in his soft fur, and she kept crying until there were no tears left. And through it all, Buddy stayed right where he was, keeping her company in the darkness. Maybe that was the thing about kindness, she thought. Maybe it was not about fixing what was broken. Maybe it was just about being there. And for the first time since Prime burned, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still something in the universe worth holding on to. 3 weeks had passed since the crash, and the twins had slowly begun to find a rhythm in their new life. They woke up with the sun. They helped Sam with the morning chores. They ate breakfast together at the small wooden table in the kitchen, with Buddy always waiting hopefully for scraps beneath their feet. They worked through the day and rested in the evening, and for a few hours at a time, could almost forget the weight that pressed down on her heart. But the guilt never truly left. It was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a quiet moment to remind her of everything she had lost and everything she had failed to do. It was there when she closed her eyes at night. It was there when she woke up in the morning. It was a constant companion that she could not escape no matter how hard she tried. Felt it even more than she did. He had always been the responsible one, the careful one, the one who checked and double-checked everything before making a decision. The failure at the early warning station had broken something inside him. He smiled less now. He talked less. Sometimes would catch him staring at nothing, lost in memories that he could not share. Sam noticed, of course. He noticed everything, even though he rarely said anything about it. He had a way of watching without watching, of being present without being intrusive. It was a skill he had learned from years of living alone, of caring for animals that could not speak, of loving a wife who sometimes needed silence more than words. One night everything changed. They were sitting on the porch as usual, watching the stars come out one by one. The Kansas sky was so clear and dark that the stars looked like a million tiny jewels scattered across black velvet. On Prime, the three suns had made the night sky paler, softer. Here, the darkness was absolute and the stars burned bright. Had been quiet all day, quieter than usual. Had tried to talk to him, but he had just shaken his head and walked away. Now he sat with his hands clasped together, his 4 eyes fixed on the ground, his whole body tense with something that needed to come out. And then, without warning, he began to speak. "We killed them," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silence of the night it sounded as loud as a shout. "Billions of our people, and we killed them." Sam looked at him, but did not interrupt. His hands were shaking now. "We were at the early warning station. It was our job to monitor the beacons, to watch for threats, to raise the alarm if anything was wrong. And we saw something. We saw readings on our sensors that did not make sense, but instead of raising the alarm, we told ourselves it was probably just a glitch. We told our superiors to wait, to gather more data, to be sure before we caused a panic." Felt tears streaming down her face, but she did not wipe them away. She let them fall. "By the time we realized our mistake, it was too late," continued. "The swarm had already reached the atmosphere. The cities were already burning. We launched the warning signal, but there was no one left to hear it. Everyone was dead, everyone except us." He looked up at Sam, and his eyes were filled with a pain so deep that it seemed to have no bottom. "We should have died with them," said. "We do not deserve to be here. We do not deserve your kindness or your food or your shelter. We are murderers. We have the blood of billions on our hands." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the gentle chirping of insects in the fields and the soft breathing of Buddy at Sam's feet. Then Sam leaned forward in his chair and rested his elbows on his knees. "Let me tell you about my wife," he said quietly. Blinked, surprised by the change of subject, but Sam continued before he could say anything. "Her name was, and she was the best thing that ever happened to me. She was kind and funny and smart, and she loved this farm almost as much as I did. We were married for 18 years, and every single day I woke up grateful that she had chosen to spend her life with me. Sam paused and could see the pain in his eyes. It was the same pain she saw in his eyes, in her own eyes when she looked in the mirror. 5 years ago, she found a lump in her chest. The doctors said it was stage 2 cancer. They said if we caught it early, she had good odds of beating it, but I was busy. The farm was struggling. Money was tight. I kept putting off her appointments, telling her we would go next month, telling myself that a few more weeks would not matter. His voice cracked, and he took a moment to steady himself before continuing. By the time we finally went to the doctor, it was stage 4. The cancer had spread everywhere. She died 8 months later, and I held her hand until the very end. Sam looked up at the stars, and there were tears on his cheeks now. For 2 years after that, I blamed myself. I told myself I was a murderer. I told myself that I had killed my own wife through my own stupidity and selfishness. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I almost lost the farm because I did not care if I lived or died anymore. He reached down and put his hand on Buddy's head, and the dog looked up at him with those warm brown eyes. Then one day, I was driving home from town, and I saw this little golden bundle lying by the side of the road. He was half-starved, covered in ticks, barely able to stand. Someone had thrown him away like garbage. Sam scratched behind Buddy's ears, and the dog's tail began to wag. I did not want to take him. I did not want another living thing to depend on me. I was sure I would fail him the same way I had failed, but he looked at me with those eyes, and I could not leave him there. He turned to look at the twins, and there was something fierce in his gaze now, something strong and unbreakable. So I took him home. I cleaned him up. I fed him. I took care of him day after day, even when I did not feel like taking care of myself. And slowly, something began to change inside me. Sam stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out over the dark fields. Buddy did not care about my mistakes. He did not care about my guilt. He just needed help, and I was able to give it. And every day that I helped him, every day that I kept him alive and happy, I was reminded that I was still capable of doing good things, that my past did not have to define my future. He turned back to face, and his voice was firm but kind. You made a mistake, a terrible one, and you will carry that weight for the rest of your lives, but you are still here. And as long as you are still here, you have the chance to do something that matters. You have the chance to make a difference. Stared at him, and for the first time since Prime burned, something in his eyes began to shift. The question is not whether you deserve to live, Sam said. The question is what you are going to do with the life you have been given. Reached out and took her brother's hand, and together they looked up at the stars. Maybe redemption was not about erasing the past. Maybe it was about building something new. And for the first time, that seemed possible. The conversation on the porch changed something in the twins. They did not wake up the next morning feeling healed or whole, but they woke up with something they had not felt in a long time: purpose. Sam's words had planted a seed in their minds, and over the following days, that seed began to grow into an idea. The Devourer swarm did not stop at one world, and knew this from the data they had collected at the early warning station. The swarm moved from system to system, feeding on planets, growing stronger with each world it consumed. After Prime, it would find another target, and another, until the entire galaxy was nothing but dust and silence. Earth was directly in its path. The humans did not know it yet, but the swarm was coming for them. In perhaps 18 months, maybe less, the skies above this peaceful blue planet would fill with the same horror that had destroyed Prime. Unless someone warned them. The twins began to work on a plan. Their escape pod was destroyed, but the communication array inside it might still be salvageable. If they could rebuild it, if they could boost its signal, they could send a warning to Earth's governments. They could tell them what was coming. They could give humanity the one thing that Prime had not had: time to prepare. They told Sam about their plan one morning over breakfast. He listened quietly, chewing on a piece of toast, his eyes thoughtful and serious. "So this swarm," he said when they finished explaining, "it's going to come here no matter what." "Yes," said, "it is drawn to populated worlds. It feeds on life energy. Earth has billions of people. It will be an irresistible target." Sam nodded slowly. "And you think you can warn us, give us a chance to fight back?" "We do not know if humanity can defeat the swarm," admitted. "But we know that you cannot defeat it if you do not see it coming. Prime had advanced technology, powerful weapons, brilliant scientists, but we had only hours to respond. You would have months, maybe more." Sam set down his toast and looked at the twins with those steady brown eyes. "Then I guess we better get to work," he said. Over the next 2 months, the twins and Sam worked together to rebuild the communication array. Sam drove them to hardware stores and junkyards, helping them find the parts they needed. He asked questions and learned as much as he could about technology, even though most of it was far beyond his understanding. He never complained about the cost or the time or the strange looks they got when they bought unusual equipment. Buddy came along on every trip, riding in the back of Sam's old pickup truck with his tongue hanging out and his ears flapping in the wind. The dog seemed to sense that something important was happening, and he stayed close to the twins at all times, as if he was protecting them from unseen dangers. The array took shape slowly. It was a strange hybrid of technology and earth materials, held together with wire and hope and a lot of determination. Handled the delicate electronics while worked on the power systems. Sam helped wherever he could, holding things in place, passing tools, offering encouragement when frustration threatened to overwhelm them. Finally, after weeks of work, the array was complete, but there was a problem. The signal was too weak. Earth's atmosphere was thick and full of interference, and the array simply did not have enough power to cut through it. They could reach the nearest human space station, a small research outpost on the moon, but the signal kept getting lost before it arrived. They needed a booster, something powerful enough to amplify the signal and push it through the noise. Sam thought about this for a few days. He drove around the county, talked to some old friends, asked some careful questions. And then one evening, he came back to the farm with a smile on his face. "I think I know someone who can help," he said. His neighbor's name was Pete Dawson. He was 72 years old, hard of hearing, and suspicious of anything he did not understand. He lived on a farm about 5 miles down the road, and he had a barn full of equipment that most people would not recognize. Pete used to work for the government, Sam explained as they drove toward his neighbor's farm. Some kind of satellite program. He never talks about the details, but I know he's got equipment in that barn that could bounce a signal off the moon if he wanted to. And exchanged nervous glances. They had been careful to stay hidden from the other humans in the area. The thought of revealing themselves to a stranger made them anxious. "Can we trust him?" asked. Sam was quiet for a moment. "Pete is a good man," he said finally. "He's rough around the edges and he doesn't take kindly to surprises, but he's honest and he cares about doing the right thing. If we explain what's at stake, I think he'll help." They arrived at Pete's farm as the sun was beginning to set. Sam got out of the truck first and walked up to the porch, where Pete was sitting in a rocking chair with a glass of lemonade in his hand. "Evening, Pete," Sam said. Pete squinted at him through thick glasses. "Sam Porter, what brings you out this way?" "I've got some folks I'd like you to meet, and a problem I'm hoping you can help with." Pete's eyes narrowed. "What kind of folks?" Sam took a deep breath. "The kind that are going to need you to keep an open mind." He waved to the twins, and they stepped out of the truck. Saw Pete's eyes go wide as he took in their silver blue skin and their 4 eyes. He jumped up from his chair and grabbed a shotgun that had been leaning against the wall. "What in the blazes is this?" Pete demanded, pointing the gun at them. Sam stepped between the twins and the weapon, his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Easy, Pete. They're friends. They're trying to save the world." "Save it from what?" Stepped forward slowly, her hands visible and open. She pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated the holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them, images of Prime before and after the swarm arrived, images of beautiful cities reduced to ash, images of the swarm itself, dark and endless and terrible. Pete watched in silence, his face pale, his grip on the shotgun slowly loosening. When the recording ended, he lowered the weapon and looked at the twins with different eyes. "That really happened?" he asked, his voice rough. "To your world?" "Yes," said, "and it will happen to Earth if we do not warn your people." Pete looked at Sam, then at the twins, then at Buddy, who was wagging his tail as if nothing unusual was happening at all. Then he set down his shotgun and nodded. "What do you need?" he asked. And just like that, they had their third ally. The signal would get through. The warning would be sent. Humanity would have its chance. All because a farmer and his dog had decided to trust 2 strangers from the stars. Pete Dawson's barn was filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction story. There were satellite dishes and radio transmitters and computer systems that hummed with quiet power. Pete explained that he had spent 30 years working on government communication projects, and when he retired, he had taken some of the older equipment with him. He never thought he would use it again. He had just kept it for sentimental reasons. Now it would help save the world. They worked for 3 days straight, combining Pete's Earth technology with the twins' communication array. Sam helped where he could, carrying equipment, making food, keeping everyone's spirits up when things got difficult. Buddy wandered between them all, offering his silent support, his tail always wagging. On the 3rd night, everything was ready. The signal was loaded into the system, containing all the data the twins had gathered about the Devourer swarm, its movement patterns, its weaknesses, its estimated time of arrival, everything that humanity would need to prepare for the fight ahead. His hand trembled as she reached for the button that would send the signal. This was it. This was the moment they had been working toward. This was their chance to do something that mattered, to make up for the mistake that had cost so many lives. Put his hand on her shoulder. "Together," he said. She nodded, and they pressed the button at the same time. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the equipment began to hum louder, and lights flashed across the display screens, and a beam of energy shot up into the night sky, invisible to the naked eye but powerful enough to reach the moon and beyond. "It's working," Pete said, staring at his monitors. "The signal is getting through. The lunar station is receiving it." Sam let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Buddy barked once, as if celebrating. They waited through the night, watching the screens, hoping that someone on the other end would understand what they were receiving. The lunar station was small, just a research outpost with a handful of scientists. But it was connected to Earth's communication networks. If the message reached them, it would spread. Just before dawn, Pete's radio crackled to life. A voice came through, filled with static but understandable. "This is Lunar Base 1. We have received an unusual transmission, requesting confirmation of source and authenticity. Please respond." Grabbed the microphone with shaking hands. "This is of Prime. The transmission is authentic. We are survivors of a planet that was destroyed by the Devourer swarm. The swarm is heading toward Earth. You have approximately 18 months to prepare. Please relay this message to your governments immediately." There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, no longer skeptical but urgent. "Understood, relaying message now. Stand by for further contact." And that was it. The warning had been sent. The message was spreading across Earth, reaching governments and military leaders and scientists all over the world. Soon, everyone would know what was coming. The twins stepped outside into the cool morning air. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Kansas fields, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sam and Pete followed them, with Buddy trotting along at their heels. "We did it," said, his voice filled with wonder. "We actually did something." Sam nodded, a small smile on his face. "You did. You gave us a fighting chance." Over the next week, the world changed. Every news channel carried the same story. Governments announced emergency defense protocols. Scientists were mobilized to study the data the twins had provided. Military leaders began planning for a war unlike any in human history. For the first time ever, the entire planet was united by a common threat and a common hope. Watch the news reports from Sam's living room, surrounded by the people who had helped make this possible. Pete had become a regular visitor now, stopping by every day to check on the twins and share news about the global response. Sam made coffee and breakfast for everyone, just like he did every morning. Buddy lay on the floor between them all, happy and content. One evening, as the sun set over the wheat fields, found herself alone on the porch with Sam. Was inside, talking with Pete about some technical detail. Buddy was asleep at Sam's feet, his paws twitching as he dreamed. "Can I ask you something?" said. Sam nodded. "Anything." "That first day when we crashed in your field, you did not know who we were or what we wanted. You did not know if we were dangerous, but you smiled at us. You offered to help." She paused, searching for the right words. "Why did you believe us? Why did you trust us from the very beginning?" Sam thought about it for a long moment, looking out at the fading light. "Because you were scared," he said finally. "I could see it in your eyes, real fear, the kind that comes from losing everything. And in my experience, scared people do not lie about the things that scare them. They just need someone to listen." Felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not try to hide them. She had learned that tears were not weakness. They were just another way of being honest. "We would have died in that field if not for you," she said. "We would have given up. You and Buddy, you saved us. Not just our lives, you saved our souls." Sam reached out and took her hand, and his grip was warm and steady. "That's what people do," he said simply. "We help each other. That's how we survive." Buddy woke up and stretched, then padded over to rest his head on Snee. Knee. She scratched behind his ears, and he looked up at her with those warm brown eyes that had comforted her through so many dark nights. Somewhere out in the darkness of space, the Devourer swarm was moving closer. Somewhere out there, the battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, but was not afraid anymore. She had seen what humans were capable of. She had seen their kindness and their courage and their stubborn refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. The people of Prime had faced the swarm alone, unprepared, unwarned. They had fallen in hours, but Earth would not fall so easily. Earth had time, Earth had warning, and Earth had something that Prime had never had: hope. In the months that followed, as humanity armed itself for the fight to come, and stood beside Sam Porter and his golden retriever, they trained soldiers and advised scientists, and shared everything they knew about the enemy that was approaching. They became part of the team that would defend this strange blue planet, this world that had welcomed them when they had nothing. Because that was the thing about humans, they realized. Humans did not believe in lost causes. They believed in each other. They believed that broken things could be fixed, that wounds could heal, that even two guilt-ridden aliens from a dead world could find a reason to keep fighting. And in the end knew that stubborn, irrational, beautiful belief would be what saved them all. The stars shone bright above the Kansas farm. The swarm was coming, but so was humanity. And this time they would be ready.